We sometimes hear of kind of the doctrine of the faith and tradition. And according to tradition, the young man who appears in Mark chapter 14, the reading of the Passion that we read this past Palm Sunday, the one who they try to grab a hold of and he escapes. They say that kind of like an artist who sometimes paints their image in the painting that they're doing as kind of their signature. They say that was Mark, that he was the one that escaped out of the hands of those and ran away from the cross. They also suggest that St. Mark, as our first reading tells us, was a pretty close companion of St. Peter, and that a lot of the things that Mark writes in his gospel were as a result of these conversations and long-term relationship as they went out preaching from Peter. So Mark's gospel, it's not so strange that we would have Peter's first reading today from Peter and Mark. And interesting that Mark really paints some interesting pictures in his gospel, might say earthy. Some have said that Mark has painted the picture of an often failing disciples being engaged by the always faithful Jesus. And that seems to kind of resonate even with Peter's example, and maybe Mark's, if that was him that ran away, that somehow they came back, that they did some things that would have said that they were distancing themselves from Jesus and his suffering, and then somehow Jesus didn't start over after the resurrection with a new bunch of people, but reach back out to them because, as you know from your experience, how do we learn and grow in our faith? Sometimes this is a struggle. We learn from our mistakes. And in response to the God who's continued to reach out to us, even though we've fallen. So if we feel like we can't be lovable, or we might turn to God to say, well, is that what you think about me? Because it doesn't seem so. It seems that you felt that I was lovable enough for you to do these things and to invite me back. And that's really important for us to hold on to as we struggle sometimes in our journey. Don't think because I failed that I'm lost. No, just the opposite, it seems. It gives us an opportunity to learn and let Jesus heal us in a way that would then help us proclaim the truth of the message rather than just the message. Because we could talk about Jesus, we could really learn a lot about the scriptures and never really know him. So this is the invitation, I think, for us to see that importance, and that's what happened in Mark's life, we think, as well as Peter, who we know denied Jesus, even to an oath, as it says in Mark's gospel, that he swore that he never knew him. So we know that doesn't keep us distant from God, because he's always reaching, always wanting, always faithful to the unfaithful. And that's an invitation to us to grow more faithful, not because, again, we're trying to earn God's love, but always as a reply to the God who first loved us. So everything we do, all our actions, all our sacrifices, all our growing and striving is all a reply to the God who first loved us and showed us this, as we hear about in the scriptures today. And that even though he was ascended into heaven, we will celebrate that in a couple weeks, it's strange that he was still, it says, they went forth and preached everywhere after this, while the Lord worked with them. So Bishop Robert Barron, he's famous for saying that Jesus at the ascension didn't become present somewhere else, but somehow else. It's mystery. We can't figure it out, but he's there with us, working with us to help us not only just receive the messages, to be healed, yes, but to be healed in a way that then helps us proclaim that message in a more honest way. Because how can other people trust us unless we've been through it? And maybe you know some folks that have been through the 12-step programs. Well, who's the best mentor? Who's the best sponsor? A person in recovery themselves. So that's us, sinners, on the road to conversion. St. Mark gives us that grace to see it a little bit clearly, that that's a sign of dignity, not anything that we should be ashamed of, but an invitation to see that that's why he invites us to move forward now with him, with the blessing of the saints in our lives, with the strengthening of the Eucharist and the Word of God, so that we can be that more confident witness. And we give that witness by saying, hey, look at me. I didn't have it all figured out. I still don't, but I'm trusting that God is inviting me to help share this message with you. So let's give that a try.